Change News.
This is Voice of Change Radio News. I'm Amanda Kumalo. A quick look at stories making the headlines. President leaves for AfDB forum in Egypt. In business news, Zimbabwe to receive $4 million AfDB credit guarantees. In regional and international news, Israel intensifies killings in Nablus Palestine. In sports news, Bosso Excutive survived vote of no confidence as Messi financials presented. The news in detail. President Mnangagwa is expected to join over 3,000 delegates who include heads of state and government, central bank governors and members of the development community at the 58th annual meetings of the Board of Governors of the African Development Bank and the 49th meetings of the Board of Governors of the African Development Fund. The meetings run from today until Friday in the resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh, an Egyptian city on the southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula in South Sinai Governorate on the coastal strip along the Red Sea. The 2023 annual meetings are running under the theme Mobilizing Private Sector Financing for Climate and Green Growth in Africa. President Mnangagwa is expected to join other leaders tomorrow for a high-level presidential dialogue, which will run under the theme The Changing Global Financial Architecture and the Role of Multilateral Development Banks. Zimbabwe is expected to take advantage of the AfDB annual meetings to outline its strategy to resolve its debt and arrears to international financiers and creditors. The AfDB says that this year's meetings provide leaders an opportunity to take stock of Africa's response to the growing threat of climate change and the impact of the situation in Ukraine on the continent's food security and untapped natural resources. In other news, the $153 million Robert Gabriel Mugabe International Airport expansion project is now complete and will be handed over to the Airports Company of Zimbabwe next month, with the refurbishment of the older terminal area set to be finished by December. Travelers will start using the extension by end of June as the government continues its drive to enhance aviation infrastructure in line with global standards. Developing an efficient transport system is critical in enhancing economic growth in line with the country's aspirations as expressed under the National Development Strategy 1 (NDS1). The government is upgrading aviation infrastructure countrywide in an effort to meet international standards and attract more airlines, more passengers, and more tourists. A look at business news. Zimbabwe is set to receive commercial credit guarantees worth over $4 million from the African Development Bank AfDB through its African Fertilizer Financing Mechanism to support the local industry, the bank said in a statement last week. This was after the AfDB approved the $11.7 million budgetary allocation to the AFFM for the 2023 to strengthen the fertilizer sector through access to finance, supporting the development of sustainable policy reforms to improve fertilizer production. The AFFM will facilitate smallholder farmers access to inputs and extension services through credit guarantee projects and capacity building for farmers and input distributors. In news beyond our borders, Israel forces are intensifying killings of Palestinians in Palestine with the recent massacre of 3 more Palestinians during a raid at Balata refugee camp in Nablus. In a statement, Ambassador of the State of Palestine to Zimbabwe said they condemn in the strongest terms the heinous crimes of assassination committed by the Israel apartheid occupation forces against the Palestinians. Ambassador Al-Masri said the massacres left several Palestinians injured. And finally, in sports news, Highlanders Football Club's executives survived a vote of no confidence after the auditors issued an adverse opinion on the club's financials, which paints a bad picture of the institution. An adverse opinion means that the auditors cannot vouch for the authenticity of Highlanders' financials, and the statements do not fairly present the financial position. The explosive meeting held yesterday at the clubhouse was a continuation of the January 29 annual general meeting that failed to produce audited financial statements. What became clear at yesterday's meeting was that there was a management crisis at Highlanders, with the executive and board working relationship seemingly strained. That brings us to the end of this bulletin.
Voice of Change News.